If you're planning to travel internationally in 2023 and you're a bit out of practice, maybe you haven't done it for a while, this video is for you. I'm at the end of a 3-week trip to Europe at the moment, and it's been really interesting because I haven't really traveled here for the last 4 years due to the pandemic. So there's a bunch of things that I had forgotten about travel, and I've actually learned a few new things on this trip. So here are my travel tips in 2023. Basically, this trip, I'm here to see family and friends, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind. The trip looks something like this. I flew from Japan to Frankfurt via Vienna. This is on Austrian Airlines, my first time flying with them. And then I made my way to Bilbao. I have family who live in Plentzia, which is a small kind of coastal town near Bilbao. Had a week there with my family, wonderful. And then I made my way to London. And London was basically to see friends. Very, very hectic few days in London. And then finally, I flew to Nuremberg, again via Frankfurt, and then taking the train from Frankfurt to Nuremberg. And I'm going to fly home to Japan in a couple of days' time. Now, one really nice thing about this trip is that COVID restrictions for entry to Japan ended on April 29th. That means that I don't have to worry about apps and certificates and paperwork for my return to Japan. And of course, COVID restrictions everywhere else ended some time ago. Now, in this video, we're going to look at miles and points. So this is air miles and hotel points. Very, very briefly, we're going to look at what to do on the flight. We're going to look at arriving in another country. We're going to look at hotels, and then a quick tip for navigating once you're on the ground. Air miles and hotel points is a huge topic. I'm actually planning to do some more videos about this in the future. So today we'll just go over the really basic things, which are that you can use these loyalty programs for two main purposes. And the first purpose is to get free flights and free hotel stays. So this would be a award using your points and your miles to have free flights and free stays at hotels. The second thing you can do is you can get status with airlines and hotel groups. And this status, once you get to the mid-tier, the first tier generally doesn't really give you very much, but the second tier, the mid-tier for airlines and hotels generally gives you some quite nice perks. So for airlines, I'll find the mid-tier will give you, and for me, this is what I find the most useful. You can use the business desks to check in for the flight. And this is huge because it'll save you hours potentially at the airport. I haven't used an economy check-in for years now, maybe a decade. And so you can avoid that huge long line and instead go straight to the business desk and check in there. The second big kind of advantage is that you can usually use a lounge if you have mid-tier airline status. And the lounge can be good, can be not good. You know, you can get food, you can get drinks, you can get Wi-Fi, you can get somewhere to sit down a lot of the time. And that's quite useful. You can normally take someone with you as well. So if you're traveling with someone else and they don't have status, you can take them in with you as your guest. And so that's pretty nice as well. The other kind of really useful one is that you get more baggage allowance. So you can take normally an extra piece of checked luggage, which is really, really useful if you're coming back, like I am this time. If you're coming back with presents and purchases, that really helps. Now for hotels, it's quite similar. So for a hotel, if you have mid-tier status, you can get things like upgrades to nicer rooms and maybe suites. You can get late checkout. With some hotels, you can get free breakfast even if you haven't booked it. And those are the main, and you might have access to a lounge if the hotel has a lounge. So those are the main benefits for hotels of status. Now, credit cards are in here because credit cards will help you get air miles or get hotel points. And also some credit cards will give you status without having to earn it. And that can be very, very useful. But we're going to go into all of this in the video that I'll be making soon. So to make sure you don't miss that video, please do subscribe to the channel and then you'll get notifications and you'll get our videos in the future. Right, before leaving on your trip, you'll probably want to book flights. Something that I found very useful this time was using Google Flights to find fares. And the nice thing that I discovered about Google Flights this time, it's not just booking the flight, you can actually search by region as well. I was actually searching for flights to Europe, and then I could see which city was going to be cheap to fly to. And then connecting within Europe is actually a pretty easy and cheap option. So it doesn't really matter where you fly to as long as you get to the right continent, as it were. And Google Flights makes it quite easy to do this. Now, one really important thing is to buy your flights from the airline directly, even if it's more expensive. And the reason for this is that if you buy your flights through a third party like Expedia or something similar, and you run into some kind of problem, it's really difficult to get that problem sorted out because everyone passes the buck. If you ask the airline, they'll say, oh no, you've got to talk to Expedia. And if you ask Expedia, they'll say, oh no, you've got to talk to the airline. And it can be really frustrating trying to fix problems. On the other hand, if you buy them from the airline, then it's the airline's responsibility and it's much easier to get those problems addressed. So I definitely recommend buying your tickets from the airline that you're flying with, even if it's slightly more expensive. Now, similar to that is trying to buy a single ticket. So even if you're connecting somewhere and you're flying via somewhere else, like I did, I flew via Vienna this time, trying to buy a single ticket is again going to save you problems. The main thing here is that if you buy separate tickets from different airlines and there's a problem with the first flight, you're going to end up missing your second flight, and you don't really have any recourse in that situation. It's your responsibility to get to the second flight. On the other hand, if you'd bought a single ticket, then the airline is responsible for getting you to your final destination. So if there's a problem with the first flight and you miss the second flight, they will sort you out and put you on a different flight, and it's their responsibility to do so. So again, paying slightly more to get a single ticket is probably a good idea. Now, the next one is something that I ran into on this trip, and that is to confirm the time that you can check in. So I tend to get to the airport really early, 3, maybe 4 hours in advance, just to be super sure, and so I'm not stressed and rushing around at the airport. But many airports, especially ones where your airline is not the main airline, there will be limited check-in hours. And normally, that's within 2 or 3 hours of the flight leaving. So I actually went to London City Airport this time for the first time, which was great, except that my airline only opened their check-in desks 2 hours before departure. And actually in practice, it was actually 1 hour and 40 minutes before departure. So I got there 3 hours early and I had to just stand around for 1 hour and a quarter waiting for the desks to open. So that wasn't great. Definitely check that in advance. And the last thing that caught me out was when you connect, they'll often make you go through security again. And this is a problem if you've got liquids with you, if you've bought something from duty free, or if you filled your water bottles, you'll have to empty them out again to go through security. And that caught me by surprise when I went through Vienna again. So just be aware of that. If you've got a connection, just be super careful with liquids and so on. On the plane, these are my tips for traveling on the plane. And I think if you follow some or all of these, you'll have a much more pleasant experience with especially long flights. And the first thing is to take water with you. Take a water bottle, fill it before you get on the plane. You can fill it at the lounge, or normally there's drinking fountains in the terminal. And yes, they'll give you water on the plane, but you have to ask for it, and you're not going to be able to get it exactly when you want it. Whereas if you've got a water bottle, you can keep yourself hydrated whenever you want. Similar to that is to take some snacks, some food that you like, something healthy that you can munch on if the meal's timing isn't good, or if you don't want to eat the meals. Possibly the thing that makes the biggest difference for me on flights is having decent noise cancelling headphones. The first time I tried these with the Bose noise cancelling headphones back in the day, it was amazing. A lot of the stress from traveling on long flights is from the noise, right? You don't really notice it, but it's there, and it's really stressful. So putting noise cancelling headphones on, they're especially good at dealing with constant noise from plane engines. So having a decent pair of noise cancelling headphones really helps with this. If you're hoping to sleep on the flight, taking an eye mask with you is a game changer, because you never know what they're going to be doing with the lights. And even if the lights are off, the person next to you could be watching a film or reading with the light on and so on. So having an eye mask just allows you to control the light, just as the noise cancelling headphones allow you to control the noise. And just as it's a good idea to bring your own water and your own snacks, it's also a good idea to bring your own entertainment. So yeah, most planes will have entertainment with them, but you might not like it, and in some cases it could be broken, and you don't want to be on a 14-hour flight, 17-hour flight with nothing to do. What I do is I'll bring a Kindle with a couple of hundred books on it. If you have an iPad or something similar, you can download media to it. You can download movies and TV shows and so on. But just having something just as a backup in case the plane entertainment is not to your liking or you can't access it. Pajamas seems like a weird one, but I first tried this when I took a first class flight on JAL to New York, and they handed out pajamas and everyone got changed, so I got changed as well. And it was incredible how much difference it made to have soft, loose, comfortable clothes for the flight. Ever since then, I've made sure that either I've got something to change into that's comfortable and soft and really nice, or that I travel using comfortable clothes. Loose-fitting t-shirts, loose trousers, and so on. And it makes a huge difference. So do try this. Take something that's really comfortable to wear, and either get changed just before you get on the plane or as soon as you get on the plane, and that will make a huge difference. And my last flying tip is to do with jet lag, actually. So I've been finding that I've been more and more affected by jet lag as I get older. So I'm 45 now. Jet lag didn't bother me in my 20s at all. It wasn't too bad in my 30s, but now in my 40s it's pretty bad. So I was really pleasantly surprised this time because I did some fasting before. So the day before I flew, I fasted, and then the day after I flew, I fasted, and that really seems to have helped with the jet lag. I have a theory about this, which is with these long flights, you'll often end up eating constantly for a really long time. So you might have breakfast and then lunch and then get on the plane and then get served a meal and eat that meal and then get another meal before you arrive and then eat something else when you're there. So you end up having 5 or 6 full meals over kind of a 20-hour period. And that can really mess up your body, basically. So by doing a little bit of fasting, by not eating beforehand, not eating afterwards, that really seems to have helped me this time. And the jet lag really wasn't particularly painful. 3 quick tips for arrival. If you can, stay at the airport. On this trip, I stayed at Narita before I flew out, and then I stayed in Frankfurt when I arrived and before traveling on to Spain. That made a huge difference because I could really relax and ease into the trip. Do check public transport for your arrival. I've got a pretty bad habit that I just turn up and assume that something's going to be there, but this time, when I got back to the UK, there was actually a rail strike. So there were no trains, and I had to book a coach in advance just to make sure I'd have a travel option. Same thing in Germany, traveling from Frankfurt to Nuremberg. It ended up being a public holiday that day, so I had to book the train beforehand. And if I hadn't, then I wouldn't have been able to take the train at all. Checking transport, booking transport, and then maybe checking for things like strikes or public holidays that are going to mess up public transport. It is going to really save you some headaches if you think to do that. And the last thing is mainly for people traveling alone or without their family. So lots of countries are starting to implement tourist taxes. So at the hotel, if they ask you, are you here on business or on holiday, all things being equal, if you say you're on business, you won't get taxed. And if you say you're on holiday, you will have to pay the tourist tax. This time, I've basically just said I was on business. It's a bit cheeky, but just be aware that this is happening now more and more around the world. I don't really see why business travelers shouldn't get taxed. I think if you're going to tax people for traveling, tax everyone. That makes more sense to me. I guess they just didn't want to annoy the business lobby. Basically, if you remember to just say you're on business and avoid that surcharge. The last thing I found on this trip was something called Live View on Google Maps. So if you're walking on Google Maps, you'll often run into this problem where you don't really know where you're starting from, and you don't really know the direction, so it's really hard to set off walking on Google Maps. Now, if you use Live View, it'll actually use AR, which is augmented reality. And what it does is it uses the camera to look at the street, but it's going to put this weird arrow on top of that image, showing you exactly where you need to go. And this was a lifesaver for me, trying to navigate London and Frankfurt and Nuremberg. Having this arrow, I mean, you look a bit weird walking around with your phone, but everyone's walking around with their phones, so it's not too bad. If you're trying to walk around somewhere and you're finding it difficult to get oriented, click on live view, and that's before you start basically. So on Google Maps, you'll go in, you'll search, and then normally you'd click start. But next to the start button, there's a live view button. Click that instead, and you'll get this funky arrow guiding you around. Really, really useful. Check it out next time you're walking around. If you found this video useful, please do click like and subscribe to the channel to get more videos and to help us out. And if you want more information about money or personal finance or retirement or pensions or investing, please go to RetireJapan.com. And we'll see you in the next video.